Okay, we're gonna learn how to make sauerkraut today. I have some of it started so that you don't have to watch the whole entire process, but I will show you everything that you need to learn. So you're gonna start with cabbage. Cabbage actually keeps for a long time in the fridge. This has been in the fridge for a while. It does have a little bit of black on the outside, so we're going to take those leaves off. Let me take this down. And so anything with the black on it, I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. But underneath is fine. I've probably had this in my fridge for about a month. And I save this stuff because my neighbors have ducks, and so I feed it to them. Or when I was milking, I saved it for the cow or the goat. So if you have any pets or farm animals, or neighbors that have farm animals, they would probably like to have your vegetable scraps. So you get your cabbage down to where there's nothing objectionable. And then you're going to want to save a leaf from the outside, and that's going to be your lid. So I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. There's one more little spot. So these outer leaves are kind of big. That one's kind of thick. And that actually needs to be trimmed still. Oh, I forgot to trim the bottom. So you want to trim off that. That was my husband trying to call, so let me try to call him back real quick. And maybe your puppy will like it. My puppy thinks he does. Do you want a piece, Ike? Hi, I'm making a video. Can you hear me? I'm on the house phone. I'm making a video. Do you need something? Okay. Nope. Thank you. Okay, bye. That's okay. Bye. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go. Bye. Okay, so obviously I'm a novice video maker here, but at least I have a tripod now. Okay, so that's fine. And I'll go ahead and save a couple of the leaves from the outside. I actually have one from the other head of cabbage that I started already. So you want to be able to keep a couple leaves like this because you're going to use them for a lid. And I'll show you what I mean when we get to where we're putting it in the jar. Okay, and then I start, you want to have about this size of cabbage will make about a quart of sauerkraut, possibly a little bit less once it gets all mushed up. So I've already started grating up. My favorite way to do it is using a mandolin slicer. And these are some little pieces that didn't get sliced right, and so I will just cut them with the knife. But using the mandolin slicer is the easiest way to make nice small shreds. So here you can see kind of what you're getting as far as the shreds. And I have a really huge bowl that I use if I'm making more than one head of sauerkraut, but it wasn't going to fit very well on the video, so I'll just do these one at a time. Anyway, so I go from the outside of the head of cabbage and then grate towards the core. So then I just turn it over and grate some more. And then mine usually gets stuck underneath and I have to pull it out every little while. And if you want the shreds to be bigger, of course you can use, my slicer has different thicknesses where you can make it thicker, but we like it pretty thin, so I usually use the thin blade. See, there's another piece that didn't get shredded, so I'll set it off to the side. And then I just keep going around. You can shred up the core, you can cut up all of it, you can put the core in whole and ferment it like that if you want. So I'm just going to show you plain sauerkraut. The only ingredients are cabbage, salt, and water. And you always want to use sea salt because it has the natural minerals in with it. And if you don't have the minerals with it, you just have pure sodium chloride, and your body doesn't know what to do with that really. So it has to go scrounging for minerals and stealing them from other parts of your body in order to process the salt if it's refined. And the same thing with refined sugar. So that's why you want to eat foods in their natural state. Okay, this is getting pretty close. And yes, there are like little pusher things that you put on here. I have cut my fingers on it before, so you do need to be careful. I've cut my fingers with a knife before too, so whatever you're using, just be careful. Okay, so we're getting down pretty close here. And you want to just start with plain sauerkraut. They call it the gateway ferment. And then once you get the hang of it and you're used to the taste and the process and everything, some of these are coming out a little bit bigger because it's like part of the core, but that's okay. Once you get used to doing just plain cabbage sauerkraut, then you can start adding things in, like you can add beets and make beet kraut, you can add carrots, make carrot kraut, onions, you can add herbs and spices if you want. I've done dandelion kraut and basil kraut and apple celery kraut. Anyway, you just want to get the hang of it first. So just plain cabbage to start with. Okay. And I'll just put this in with the chicken food, duck food, whatever. Okay, then if you happen to just be using a knife instead of a mandolin slicer, you just want to cut everything in thin strips so that you won't have any big chunks in there, and it'll all be kind of uniform. So you could go ahead and slice up your whole head of cabbage this way, and it would work just fine. So it's whatever your preference is or whatever your available tools are. And you want to make sure everything's clean. So wash all your equipment, wash your jars. I had this bowl sitting up on top, and it was kind of dusty, so I washed it first. My jar's been sitting around for a while, so I washed it first. Of course, my hands, I washed them first. And then we just add this in. And what I always do is just start with about a teaspoon of salt. You're probably going to need a little bit more than that, but especially with sea salt, it tends to be more salty than not. So it's really bad if you get too much salt because it's hard to take it out, but if you don't have enough, you can always just add more. And I'm using the pink Himalayan salt. So I'll just start with a teaspoon. Just sprinkle it in there. then you just start squeezing it. So you just kind of squeeze and turn it so that the salt gets everywhere. See, and this is really just one head of cabbage, and I'm going to cut those a little bit more. You can also just kind of walk away and leave it, you know, once you mix the salt in a little bit, and it will kind of do the work on its own, because the salt pulls the water out of the cabbage. But it really doesn't take that long to do it. So I'll just kind of show you the process. So I just kind of squeeze and turn it, squeeze and turn it. Okay, so now while I'm squeezing, I'll talk to you about why you want to be eating sauerkraut. Fermented foods in general. Fermented foods, the fermentation process is called lactofermentation. It's done below the water, so you have to have this all submerged. It's an anaerobic process, meaning no oxygen. If there's no oxygen, the bad bacteria won't grow. Only the good bacteria will grow. And there is already some good bacteria on your food. So this, I didn't have to add anything to this sauerkraut. The good bacteria is already in there. You can actually use a starter if you want. But what happens is the good bacteria starts to multiply, and it covers the whole solution and all the food, and it begins the fermentation process, which is a breaking down of it. And in that process, it actually makes a few things happen. One, it increases good bacteria that's going to feed your gut microbiome. And your gut microbiome does a lot of things for your health. It makes your immune system function. It produces, the gut microbes actually produce serotonin and other neurotransmitters that help your brain function and your mood. Helps your digestive process. Anyway, does lots of really good things for your body, so you want them in there. And there's a lot of things in our life that ruin that balance of the good microbes versus the bad microbes, such as taking antibiotics or prescription medications, eating processed foods, eating the wrong kind of fats, stress, toxic environment. All those things will harm your good bacteria, so you need to replace them. And the modern standard American diet does not have any probiotics in it, unless you happen to be eating some fermented foods or taking probiotic capsules. So you need to get fermented foods into your diet to balance all those things out and get your gut level healed and healthy. So you can see this is getting wet. See the water dripping off of it? So I'll just squeeze it a little bit more. That's actually probably enough. The finer it's chopped, the more watery it will get too. Now you can put a starter in here. So if you don't have, I don't typically use starters. In the winter I may use them a little bit more, but I'm not going to with this batch. But what you can do is take some juice from a previous batch, which I actually have some here. I could just put a little bit, you know, a couple tablespoons of that in there. You could put some kefir whey, just the whey part in. It would act as a starter. You could also open a probiotic capsule and sprinkle it in there, and that would get some of the different strains going faster. But yeah, you don't need it. What you do need to do though, and I will do this now, is taste it. Grab a fork. You want to not get your germs in here, so I'll just set it on the fork and then use the fork in my mouth and not get that fork near any. You don't want your germs in here, anything. And that is actually just right as far as salt level. If it weren't salty enough, then I would just sprinkle a little bit more on there. You know, depending on if I can hardly taste the salt at all, or if it's just about to the point where I want it. So then at this point, you just start stuffing it in the jar. And I'm going to go ahead and use that other head of cabbage and fill this jar all the way up. But I'll go ahead and get it started just with this one to show you the process. So you're just going to stuff it all in here. And I do have a funnel I should have used, but that's okay. And then you can just press it down with your hands, or you can use something to press it in with. I have this from a squeezy thing that you use for tomato juice or applesauce or whatever. And then this is actually from a, oh shoot, what's it called? Anyway, a tart maker kit. So you can use either one of these to squish it down. And you don't have to squish it super tight. You can if you want. The tighter you squish it, the more air bubbles you're going to get out of there. But then also it will expand. So if you leave it looser, it's not going to expand as much. And that can be an issue depending on how full you have your jar. So see, this is just about halfway full. And this is a 2-quart jar. So you want to get as much of the little pieces down as you can, because anything that's up above the water level will have a likelihood to mold or get yeast on it. Hey, I see Daddy's home. Say hi. And then, so normally this would be whole. Like when I finish grating up that cabbage, it's going to be in there. But I will go ahead and show you the process, like I said. So this has enough liquid that the liquid's up here. If you're in doubt at all, or if you want some extra liquid, because when you first start GAPS diet, sometimes you want to be just having the sauerkraut juice. So in order to have the extra juice, you just put in extra salt water. So the ratio of the water that you're going to add to fermented vegetables is 1 teaspoon per cup of water. So this is 2 cups of filtered water, always filtered water. And so I'll put in 2 teaspoons of salt. So there's 1, 2, and stir it up just to dissolve the salt. And then you can add as much or as little as you want. It won't affect the process. You just want to have the salt ratio correct. But any extra liquid you have on there, you can just drink it as sauerkraut juice. In fact, you can do like only fill it 1/4 of the way full with cabbage and fill it the rest of the way with liquid if you want the extra fermented juice. Okay, once you get your liquid that you want in there, then you need to use one of these big pieces as a lid, or more than one. Maybe you want to use 2 or 3, depending on how you have it. So you can fold them to the right size, or you can just put them in whole and kind of tuck the edges down. But what you want to get is a lid condition there, so that you're holding all the little pieces down. So I'll just go ahead and use 2. And then when you're done fermenting this, you can, if you get any yeast build up on there, it would be like a thin, white, slimy layer, and that's not dangerous. So if that grows, it's going to grow on whatever's on top. And so if it's on these leaves, when I'm done fermenting this, I can just take that out, rinse it under the water, and then usually what I do is actually just cut it up and mix it back in with the sauerkraut when it's done fermenting. So that would give you a lid situation. Now if it's up closer to the top, well, I'll show you this first. So I have these glass weights, and you can buy these online. They're just called fermenting weights. They're kind of expensive. You don't have to have them. You could actually just use a rock that fits in, or anything that you have that fits in. You can use it to weight these down. The whole idea is that everything needs to be submerged, so this just helps hold things under the liquid level. So again, you don't have to use the weights. If you have them, they're great. Another thing you can do is use skewers, and I have some, I'm not sure where they are, but you break them so that they're the width of the jar, and then like if this was all the way full, then you could just tuck that in and put a bar this way and then another skewer this way, and it makes an X, and that will hold it down under the liquid too. So that's another option you have of holding it down. Okay, so these are weighted down, and then what you do at this point is just take, you want to keep it covered so that no bacteria will fall in there, and you can just take a paper towel or a napkin and a rubber band, and then you want to set it, especially if it's full, like this is probably not going to overflow, but I always set it in a jar so that if there's any overflow, it won't run onto my shelf or my table or whatever I have it in. Now how long you leave it is, you want to leave it at least 3 to 5 days, and I wouldn't even bother checking it or anything. Like you can look at it and make sure it's submerged. That's what you want to keep it, how you want to keep it. But especially in the winter when the temperatures are cool, well, depending on where you have it in your house, you might have it in a warm spot in your house. You can leave it on your counter by your stove if you want it to be warmer. If it's in a more cool spot, it could take like 7 to 10 days. And then after that time has passed, at least 3 days for sure, then you can go ahead and take your weights out and taste it. And if it's sour to your liking and kind of soft, then you can go ahead and eat it. If it's not very sour and you want it more sour, then just go ahead and put it back and leave it for a few more days and then try it again. Once you're ready to actually start eating it, like this jar is kind of big, I wouldn't want this in my fridge, so I would put it into like pint-sized jars. And the ones that I'm eating, we just keep it in the fridge, because the more you open and close it, the more likely it is to get some contamination in it, so then you want to keep it refrigerated. And the other jars that we wouldn't be using yet, I would just keep them in, I have a cold room, so I just keep them in there, and go ahead and put a lid on. In fact, let me go grab one of those. So this is one that's been fermenting for, I don't know, probably a couple months, and I just leave it in the cold room. But every week or so, you want to just untwist the cap in case there's any gas built up in there that needs to escape, and then you can just close it again. And it can just keep fermenting. Like the longer it sits, the more sour and more soft it will get. If at any point you want to stop the process, then you would refrigerate it. And then this is a dandelion kraut that I did, and it's just cabbage mixed with dandelion greens. So again, I'll just loosen the lid. That one gave a little poof, let out some gas. The more active days will be days probably 3 to 5, and you'll actually see bubbles, and if you tap on the jar, you should be able to see bubbles coming up. That means it's actively fermenting. Once the active process has stopped, after probably a week at the most, you won't really see those bubbles anymore, but it still will be slowly building up some gas. And if you have this kind of a top on it, you're not going to have to worry about the gas buildup. You can leave a regular lid on it or a plastic lid on it while it's fermenting. But if you do that, you want to just loosen the lid just like this. You don't even have to take it all the way off. A couple times a day, just to let any gas that's built up escape. But you do want to keep it covered with something to keep bacteria or dog hair or whatever out of it. So now I actually have this fermenting lid. It's called the Easy Fermenter, and you can get them from nourishedessentials.com. Again, they're kind of expensive, so you don't need to have them to start out with, but I do a lot of fermenting, and so I knew I was going to use them, so eventually I invested in getting some. Now the nice thing about this is it fits any wide mouth jar, and it has a silicone valve in the middle, which is a one-way valve, so it won't let anything in, but it will let any gas escape, so that you don't have to worry about burping it, you don't have to worry about your ferment drying out, you just don't have to worry about anything. Just put the lid on and it's good to go. And while it's in its active bubbling stage, it will go ahead and press the gas out and there won't be any oxygen in there. If you happen to open it at like after 3 or 4 or 5 days and it's not in the active phase anymore and you want it to be more sour, you put the lid back on, then it has this pump that you can actually suck any air out of it. And then leave it like that. So I'm going to open this up and put some more in once I grate up some more of this one and fill this jar on the way up, but it actually would be good to go right now, just like that. So that is all there is to it. If you have any questions, you can let me know. And happy fermenting.